Hi, I'm Will Murphy. I lead worship at Hope Lutheran Church, and I'm originally from LaBelle. Came there in '98, grew up there, and came to the Fort Myers-Estero area in 2009. Came to Hope in 2010 as a part-time youth director, and eventually in 2012 I began to lead worship full-time. During that time I met an absolutely amazing woman, Alex, my wife, and now we have 3 kids, and are just really blessed. It was in 2015 that the kidney failure began. And so that's really where this story kind of takes off.
Hi, my name is Garrett Hoyer. I am 23 years old. I met my wife 4 years ago now, in Gainesville, Florida. She was up there for school, and I lived there, was born and raised there. But in getting married to her, we decided to move down to Fort Myers to kind of pursue a little bit more of what we thought God was calling us to do. I'm currently in school to get my master's in theology and looking to eventually plant some churches somewhere. And through those amazing circumstances is kind of where the story begins, where I actually got to meet Will Murphy, and the whole story took place.
So when I said the story started in 2015, that's kind of accurate. It really starts back in 2008. So when I was 22, I developed an immunodisease called good pasture syndrome. What it means is that the part of my body that was supposed to keep me healthy instead attacked my kidneys and my lungs. So I went into acute renal failure, kidney shut down, my lungs hemorrhaged, which means they filled up with blood, and I ended up in a hospital in Fort Myers, a phenomenal hospital that's no longer there. While I was there, they began to treat me immediately, heavily, but they made me pretty aware that I wouldn't regain kidney function. I began to save this arm for what they call a fistula, which is like a big vein to make sure that you can receive dialysis to keep you alive. But while I was there, God did something absolutely amazing. Not only did He reassure me that He was in control of the situation, not only did He show me His great love and mercy through the advocacy of my mom as she stayed every night in a hospital room to make sure that I was taken care of. Not only did He show me His great love and mercy by a phenomenal team of nurses and doctors that made me feel important, He decided to let me regain 50% kidney function. So 48 days later, I was discharged from the hospital with 50% kidney function, which was a whole lot more than I thought I'd ever have. Was able to go back to a relatively normal life. There was definitely some side effects. A little more tired than usual. Always was a little anemic. But it wasn't until 2015, really maybe even fall of 2014, after the birth of my second daughter, that I noticed I was a lot more tired, a lot more regularly. But of course, when you have a newborn, you don't think much of that, and people tell you, of course you're exhausted. You've got 3 kids, you're going to be tired. So I pushed through the year, and I got increasingly foggy, found it harder to think through steps, was tired more easily. I found that I tended to feel worse after eating than better. And when October of 2015 rolled around, after a particularly hard week, I began to really decline rapidly. I wasn't able to keep food down, wasn't able to sleep, had ridiculous insomnia. I knew something was wrong, and I suspected it might be my kidneys, but I wasn't sure. So I set up an appointment with my nephrologist to follow up, my kidney doctor, but didn't make it to the appointment. I woke up in the middle of the night, right before my daughter's first birthday, and I knew something was wrong. Just knew something was wrong inside. So I woke up my wife, I had her call my father-in-law. They drove me to the emergency room. And while they were there, they said, "Yeah, buddy, you're in full-blown kidney failure. You need dialysis immediately. If you don't get it, you're going to die." I think they maybe thought I was going to die anyway. It was pretty bad. So they got me in immediately. Got me hooked up to a dialysis machine, and had to face the fact that, yeah, for whatever reason, they finally gave out. So I was in the hospital for a few weeks, was discharged, and got prepared for just a totally different experience. Obviously, I felt better than I did before I went on dialysis, but man, it's a whole different world. It's a whole different world. Your diet changes. Most things you can't eat. You have to only drink so much total fluid, not just water, but there's only so much fluid you can have in a day. Because if you have too much, it can damage your heart. It can make the disease worse. And there's just the overwhelming fatigue and exhaustion that came with it all the time. So I went back to work fully by January, and we began to figure out then what was next. What would it look like to live on dialysis? Is a transplant even possible? Can we look at that option? So they let us know that a transplant was actually a good option for me. And my team of doctors said immediately, listen, you need to start to find out if there's anybody that you know that can provide you with a kidney. Because if you don't, your quality of life is going to decline even further, and eventually you're going to die. Of all the just absolute uncertainty and chaos, my family and I were just blown away, overwhelmed by God's grace and mercy, and specifically through our home church, through Hope Lutheran, where I lead worship. They just demonstrated what a church family looks like. They were the body of Christ. They supported us emotionally. They supported us financially. They made sure that we did not go without during that time. When I couldn't work, they made sure we were fed. They made sure that we were clothed, and they made sure that we didn't have to worry. At that same time, we had a new church planter in our church body down, a guy named John Roth, who I had gotten to know as we helped them get set up. And he just blew me away with his commitment to making sure that I found a match for a kidney. Even when I was in the hospital, he came to visit, and found out later, he apparently told his associate pastor, I'm going to be a match, so I'm going to get tested. And as he went through this process with me to help me find a match, it turned out he was getting tested the whole time as well. And he was a match. I was speechless. I sat in a Barnes & Noble and just wept. Not at just my good fortune, but just at God's grace and mercy through this man. Somebody that just loved me even though he barely knew me. So I was amazed. So we let everybody know, got real excited, moved forward with the process. We're getting ready for a summer surgery. And as he moved through the process, he did everything right, but just for some reasons out of his control, he was declined as a match, you know? And so we both took a step back. I know it broke his heart because he has such a big heart and wanted to give. And I think even then, I just was reassured. I knew that whether God provided a kidney for me or not, he had already revealed his goodness to me. You know, I let people know, listen, he let me go home to my kids. And so we knew we had to get back to the drawing board, but we knew that our God was taking care of us. And I was just blown away that in the process, I had gained an incredible friend through John, and an amazing advocate.
So while we were kind of digging in roots here in Fort Myers and trying to kind of get to know people and restructure what we were thinking we were going to do, because everything kind of changed, I was following a story that John Roth was posting about on Facebook, where he had met this gentleman who needed a kidney and that he had volunteered to get tested and to kind of go through the process to see if he could actually donate. And I was blown away by the story the whole time, thinking about, wow, that's such an awesome thing to do for somebody. I wish that I could be involved in that. And following through the story, I found that he was actually denied for the operation. And so my wife and I kind of looked at each other and decided that if at all, God was telling us to do something about this. And so I decided to go ahead and see if I was a match. And so I decided to try to get in contact with this guy whose name is Will and tell him that I was going to get tested. But just thinking back to how weird it must have been for him to receive a text message like, "Hey, I'm going to get tested to see if I'm a match for you. You have no idea who I am." I hadn't even met him in person yet. So I messaged John on Facebook and got his number and just decided to go ahead and shoot him a text and say, "Hey, I'm willing to get tested. Where do I go from there?"
In the aftermath of John getting declined for the transplant and then getting back to work and trying to resettle and understand and discern where to go next, I'd received some really sweet offers to get tested. Probably one of the sweetest is from some folks that were in their mid to late 80s, and some that seemed relieved when I told them that they would probably not be allowed to get tested. I was sent a text by somebody I'd never met before. A young man called himself Garrett. May have been, may have not, I don't know. Strange phone number, but he offered to get tested, and I think we became Facebook friends pretty quickly, and so I started stalking him on Facebook and saw he was 22, and I really didn't take it that seriously. I thought it was a sweet offer. I wasn't sure how seriously he took it or how much he understood what it would mean to donate a kidney. I thought about myself at 22, and I was not sure if I would have understood what it meant to give a kidney. So I didn't want to be rude. I said, "Yeah, man, if you want to get tested, that's great." And my assumption was that I would either not hear back from him again, or he'd just get declined, and we'd kind of go back to the drawing board. But what I didn't expect was to get a follow-up as he then let me know that he was going to get tested, that he had been tested, that he was waiting on results, and then get a really crazy text message that says, "Yeah, I'm a match. So what do you want to do with this?" Now, he was at the time told that he wouldn't be able to give in a certain window because of a trip he'd taken. And so he was just incredibly generous and said, "Listen, I want to make sure that you get better as soon as possible. So keep hunting, keep seeing if you can find a match." But as I was thinking about this, as I was thinking about what it would look like to get a transplant, and as I listened to him talk about it, and listened to him talk about Romans, about how he wanted this to be an act of worship, I realized that, one, he was a heck of a lot more mature than I was at 22. That he really understood what it meant to try to live out the gospel. And that he really, really knew what it would mean to use this as a means of sharing God's greatness and His glory through this process. So there's multiple rounds of testing, and there's the second round, the surgery fitness testing. And so I figured, all right, we'll keep this on the down low. We won't mention it, and we'll see how it turns out. But at the very least, as I got to know him, I was just absolutely amazed at him as a person, his wife. They became close friends of our family. And at the very least, I was just thankful to have made a phenomenal friend and just have met a new brother in Christ that just really, really understood what it meant to live out the gospel. So we get to the surgery fitness prep, thinking we'll have to wait till the end of the year before we could even move forward. And he gets cleared. And then he drops a big bomb on me and says, "By the way, we don't have to wait till the end of the year. It's as soon as they can clear you and me for surgery and get us on the schedule that we can do this." And I almost didn't want to believe it. It was too big. People wait years for a match. And here I was in a period of 6 months with two. So it was overwhelming is not a big enough word to describe how me and my family felt. And good doesn't even begin to describe how good God was in this to me and my family. So here we are, October 20th at like 4:30, 5:30 in the morning in Tampa, getting to roll in for the craziest experience I think that any of us have ever had, or either of us have ever had.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're getting ready for surgery. It's surgery day. And it's surreal.
We're sitting in a waiting room with a couple other people that got there just about as early as we did.
Yeah.
And there's just this kind of feeling of tension almost, just, even though it's such an exciting moment, it's still nerve-wracking. You're still getting ready to have some surgery.
Absolutely. We were fortunate enough to be surrounded by our wives, by our moms, because your moms have to be there.
Absolutely.
Just already saturated in prayer, getting texts, at 5:30 in the morning of people already praying for the surgery that day. It was amazing. And so they take this guy back first and roll him to the back.
Yeah. It was an interesting experience. If you've ever had surgery before, they make you strip down. And I had a poor male tech that came in, and his job was to shave my abdomen for the surgery, and I tried to make it uncomfortable for him, just jokingly, of course. But as soon as I'm all settled, they bring Will and Alex and Alana and my mom and Alana's mom all back, and we get to just kind of sit there and talk and joke around a little bit and pray. And I think the coolest thing for us was just not that there was prayer in that room, but that there was literally prayer from across the globe. Yeah. All over our country, countries that we visited. I have friends in New Zealand who are praying for us. Yeah. All over the world. It was incredible.
It was mind-blowing. So what, they get this guy ready for surgery. They boot us out.
Yeah. They give me a little injection of something to make me a little bit dizzy, and before I know it, I'm on the operating table, and then the next thing I know, I'm in recovery. So I actually missed some of it, and so this is one of the first times I'm hearing what actually happened.
So then they roll me back, come and let me know that they're about halfway done with the surgery with Garrett. They actually take his kidney out before they even roll me back, because they have to make sure it's a good piece of kidney. So they get me back in the room, and same thing, strip me down, shave my abdomen. My male tech seemed pretty comfortable with it. I think he'd done it once or twice before. And Alana, Alex came back. We prayed again. They got ready to give me the injection. I actually never even made it back to the operating table before I was out. So I just got in the gurney and then woke up in my bed in a room afterwards. And I immediately felt better than I had in 6 months to a year. Even though I'd been cut open and had people's hands inside of me, I actually felt better in that moment than I had in months, over a year. It was amazing to wake up and be able to think clearly again.
And that's one of the things that we kind of wanted to talk about in this video, is that there's a really, really big importance on organ donation.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to say that if you're not an organ donor that you're just wasting things, but in the moments after surgery, even though he'd been cut open, he felt better. And I've seen people who've had heart transplants that in the days after surgery are off drips that were keeping them alive and off of machines that were keeping them alive beforehand. And we just really want you to kind of understand the importance of it. Not that it's something that we're going to look down on you for if you're not doing, but it's just something that if God's putting that on your heart, there's a reason. Yeah. There's definitely a reason. Yeah. You're helping somebody to live again. You really are.
I think the first thing we'd say is, of course, it's scary, and that it's a big decision. It is. It's a big decision, but it's a life-saving one. It saved my life. Garrett doing what he did, I'm sure he's going to tell you that it was about saying yes. And in his saying yes, what he did was give me a second chance to see my kids grow up. Let me be a dad again. Let me play with my kids and go swimming with them and be able to take my wife on dates to restaurants again. I mean, it was life-changing because he said yeah.
And that's what another thing we wanted to say is just that, through this whole process, everybody kept asking me, how can you do this? How can you think about donating a kidney to somebody you don't know? It's crazy. Why would you do such a good thing? And it's, in the end of the day, it wasn't really anything that I did. If you look back through the story we just told you, I met Alana and married her, and she's the only reason that we decided to come back down to Fort Myers, because I had no connections to Fort Myers. At the same time, I had a pastor who I knew well and was good friends with that happened to move down to the same area that I was in, happened to post about it on Facebook, happened to get tested, happened to not be cleared, and then I just had to say, yeah, sure, I'll get tested. God set that whole thing up for us, and that's really what we want to say here, is that God's grace was over this entire thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So what? We're going to put some links in the box below to some areas that you can go to find out more about living donation, about being an organ donor. It changes lives.
It really does.
There was nothing special about me. There was no reason that I should have gotten it that somebody else didn't, except for just the mercy and the grace of our good God. At the dialysis center, I met men and women that had been waiting for years for a kidney, that had gone through their family and had realized there was no match. So you can change a life. You can absolutely save a life.
And finally, we really just want to say thank you again to several people. First and foremost, our wives. You guys are amazing. We thank you so much, and we love you. And we really couldn't have done anything without you.
No.
The recovery process, taking care of things around the house, it just couldn't have happened without you, and we're so thankful for you.
You're better than us in every way.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we also want to thank the people at Tampa General, TGH, who were absolutely incredible taking care of us. Dr. Wong, our surgeon.
Was amazing.
He was amazing.
Yeah. Phenomenal team all the way around. Great nurses.
Great people.
Yeah.
And finally, we want to thank you all for watching and for praying. Your prayers mean more than you know, especially in a time where people get angry about that kind of thing. Prayers, it's not the least you can do, it's the most you can do.
Yeah.
We really believe that. And we believe that God having his hand on this is the whole reason that it was able to happen.
Oh, man, God guided us every step of the way. It was his mercy that made this possible, placing people in the right place at the right time. And in that same vein, we just want to thank, the churches that stood up and actually, were the body of Christ for us, supported us, just through making sure our needs were taken care of, loving on us, lifting us up in prayer, making sure we had a church home to go back to. Man, just thank you for being the church. One other person we should probably thank is John.
Absolutely.
John, you're amazing, awesome advocate.
Yes.
We love you.
None of this could have happened without you being willing to be tested either, and listening to God's work in your life.
Absolutely.
And we thank you for that, and we thank you for what you're doing with Thrive here in our community.
Yeah.
And our prayers are with you in getting that started up.
Yeah. So we thank you. Oh, one last thanks. The other people that called to get tested or went through the process, that's just saying yes. So it was me and Garrett, and I'm so thankful it was. But the people that stepped forward and were willing to do this, man, y'all are just as much a part of this story as Garrett is. And
Absolutely.
So we just are thankful.
Absolutely. So again, thank you for watching. There's going to be some more links in the description to learn more about organ donation and about some of the other things. We might put a couple little scriptures down in there, some things that were influential in our lives there.
Yeah.
And we really thank you for everything.
Yeah, thank you.